From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefania Bravo. This is From the South. The president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, has rejected new illegal and unilateral sanctions imposed on the Central Bank of Venezuela, announced by the U.S. Secretary of State John Bolton on Wednesday. The Bolivarian president declared that the people of Venezuela will overcome Washington's aggression with dignity.
The daily North American imperialist aggressions have returned with new unilateral sanctions which are totally illegal and immoral. Now against an institution considered sacred by the whole world, the Central Bank of Venezuela. The world's central banks are sacred. Every country respects them. No one goes against the central bank. Not one country. Let me tell you, Mr. Imperialist John Bolton, that your sanctions make us stronger. I've spoken with the president of the Central Bank of Venezuela and he told me the central bank will face and overcome these sanctions imposed by the United States on our monetary institution with dignity and the law on our side.
A judge in La Tacunga, Ecuador, has ordered preliminary detention for former Foreign Minister Ricardo Patiño. The prosecutor's office opened an investigation against Patiño last October when, in a speech, he called on the Citizens' Revolution militants to take the institutions and close the roads. The former foreign minister has denied the accusations and had previously said he will consider staying in the country because of all the illegality and abuse. Ecuador's Attorney General Diana Salazar has confirmed Patiño left the country 4 days after a judge denied his detention for the same case. She also said the judge who first declined Patiño's detention will be investigated. The funeral of the two-time former president of Peru, Alan Garcia, took place at the Aprista Party headquarters in Lima. Thousands of supporters and family members gathered at the APRA political party offices to bid farewell to Garcia. Party members did not allow floral offerings sent by public institutions at the funeral, while his relatives rejected state honors. The former Peruvian president, Alan Garcia Perez, took his life to avoid going to jail. The judiciary had ordered his preliminary detention as part of an investigation into a corruption and money laundering case.
With weak vital signs, Garcia was transferred to Casimiro Ulloa Hospital in Lima. According to the Interior Minister, before being detained by the police, he asked to call his lawyer, but locked himself in his room and shot himself in the temple. Attempts to save his life were in vain.
We have to say that President Garcia passed away some minutes ago. For us, the upper party members who are his family, this is an act of dignity and of great honor.
Garcia was being investigated for allegedly receiving bribes of more than $4 million from the Odebrecht construction company. The company may have benefited with multi-million-dollar projects during his time in office. For the analyst Héctor Bejar, Garcia's suicide could have negative consequences.
This will be used by corrupt people in Peru, who will declare that it is unfair political persecution. That's the most used phrase in the anti-corruption system right now. I think that here in Peru, public opinion is needed to calmly defend the system, because those who have engaged in corruption are going to ask for their trials to be stopped.
Following the untimely death of the former president, there was an immediate reaction on the streets.
I think he preferred to leave this world than to be accused of being a thief, something he had denied all his life.
Maybe he felt that his situation was already very complicated, and that's why he decided to make this decision. As a Christian and as a human being, I feel really sorry for him. However, the investigation has to continue.
He didn't want to face the judicial system. He said, they will put me in jail, and he didn't want to be locked up.
This is how Alan Garcia avoided becoming another former Peruvian president behind bars. Alberto Fujimori and Pedro Pablo Kuczynski are currently jailed, as is Ollanta Humala. They will shortly be joined on the list by Alejandro Toledo once he is extradited from the U.S.
And prosecutors allege that Odebrecht paid millions of dollars in bribes to the private secretary of Alan Garcia. Let's take a closer look at the corruption case against the former Peruvian president.
Luis Nava Guiber and his son Jose Nava Mendiola received more than $4 million from Odebrecht, according to the news website IDL Reporters. The alleged bribes were through a shell account at a private bank in Andorra. Both men are now fugitives from justice.
Mr. Nava is indeed abroad, and his father is in hospital. All this is well known, and so the public prosecutor, in this case, José Domingo Pérez, has to make an independent assessment of all this information.
In the Odebrecht files seen by Peruvian journalists, it says that these apparent bribes were linked to mega construction projects like the Interocean Highway and the Olmos irrigation works. According to the Congressman Humberto Morales, both projects involved a series of irregularities.
There were 6-hour meetings between José and Nava and Odebrecht staff, and then the government issued emergency decrees, which in fact there is nothing urgent about them, but which made significant changes to the budgets of these projects.
Luis Nava Guiber was for years a close friend of Alan Garcia's. He was his personal secretary throughout his second term, and this also became a part of the investigations. Aside from Nava, arrest warrants were issued for 4 senior officials in Garcia's government in connection with the car wash corruption scandal. They include directors of Petro Peru, the Ministry of Transport, and the Lima Metro.
And as our correspondent has announced, another former president is out of danger after having been rushed to the hospital on Wednesday due to high blood pressure. Pedro Pablo Kuczynski has returned to house arrest. Odebrecht case attorney has established that PPK has no serious illness and therefore there is no need to change the request for his house arrest. Kuczynski is currently serving 10 days of pretrial detention while under investigation for corruption. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has announced it is tightening its blockade on Cuba through the controversial Helms-Burton Law and will begin another measure against the island. The government announced the enforcing of Title III of the Helms-Burton Law, which allows U.S. companies and individuals to claim properties expropriated by the Cuban government at the beginning of the revolution. Title III also allows legal claims against foreign companies which engage in business that involves such property.
I'm announcing that the Trump administration will no longer suspend Title III. Effective May 2nd, the right to bring an action under Title III of the Libertad Act will be implemented in full. I have already informed Congress of my decision.
Cuba's Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez replied to the U.S. measures on Twitter. He said this announcement from Pompeo is an act on international law and the sovereignty of Cuba and other states. He added that this aggressive escalation of actions by the U.S. against Cuba will fail. As in the Battle of Girón, we will win. He was referring to the U.S. invasion in 1961, which was stopped by the forces of Fidel Castro. And Cuban citizens have also reacted angrily to the tighter U.S. sanctions.
It's an outrage, an atrocity. There's no basis. Only a madman can think of this. This will bring about a series of international problems, given that more than 60 years ago, here there was an attempt to compensate those who had lost property, and it was not accepted. So now, after 60 years, they want to take this up again. I think that in some cases, Cuba will be able to negotiate, but not in all cases.
I believe that there will be an additional effect than just on future investment. The United States thinks that those octogenarians who were defeated at the Bay of Pigs will win something, but they probably won't get anything. What I would say to Cubans is, who's going to take this away from us? We are here. The properties are here. They're not on the moon or in the United States.
The government of Mexico has officially condemned the U.S. decision to apply Title III. The Foreign Affairs Office said that the move could affect international businesses operating in Cuba and stated it would protect Mexican interests if necessary. Mexico said that it continues to condemn unilateral sanctions, adding that such measures are in violation of international law. The statement concludes by saying that Mexico is looking forward to the end of the economic blockade. In Brazil, statistics are showing that the killing of campesinos are expected to rise, especially after President Jair Bolsonaro stopped the agrarian reform. Social movements are now demanding that workers' rights be respected and for an agrarian reform to be approved.
On this 23rd anniversary of the massacre at El Dorado dos Carajas, social movements fighting for land rights issued a warning. They say the government of Jair Bolsonaro is threatening all the progress made in land reform and small-scale family farming.
There are three things: land, healthy food, and education. Now in Brazil, and the majority of Latin American countries governed by the far right, all of this is being blocked. That's why the landless workers movement is taking this opportunity to deliver a manifesto to the Brazilian people to say that we need a political struggle, because land reform and change in the countryside is being blocked by an ultra-right government, and we have to overthrow it to protect the rights of workers.
From the Brazilian Congress, protesters condemned all the measures that undermine national sovereignty and the agricultural sector, including the paralyzation of land reform and the demarcation of land for indigenous communities and Afro-Brazilian quilombos, as well as pension reform.
Without land reform and other structural measures, we will face increasing problems of inequality, hunger, poverty and mass unemployment. This is a critical moment for Brazil, with a government that is putting our future at risk.
I think it is especially important now to fight for land, to organize and to explain to the population that the imprisonment of former President Lula and now of Assange, all this is an attack on the working class.
The current government has not only frozen land reform, it has put the enemies of land reform in charge of rural policy, and it's covering all the programs that gave small farmers some autonomy and the ability to develop through cooperates. Tragically, we have gone back 50 years in Brazil.
This protest is also against the dramatic increase in licenses for the use of harmful pesticides. In the last 3 months, the importation of more than 100 new pesticides to Brazil has been approved.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. The Prime Minister of St. Lucia, Alan Chesney, presented a $588 million fiscal package on Wednesday. Chesney announced a number of budgetary measures, including an increase in fuel taxes and a reduction in value-added tax. Under a new income tax system, personal allowance would also increase. It is projected that St. Lucia's economy will grow by 3% this financial year. There has also been a slight decline in public debt.
Number 9, unemployment, especially among young people, is still too high. Poverty is still too widespread. Education is not meeting the needs of our students or businesses. Healthcare is inadequate, and crime continues to rise. This is the experience of the average solution, Mr. Speaker. We cannot run away from it. This government will not run away from it, Mr. Speaker. We're going to continue to meet it head on. What is required is our continued commitment and perseverance. If we don't continue on this path, we'll be doomed to a cycle of wash, rinse, repeat for another 20 years if we don't act now.
The trial continues against former Panamanian President Ricardo Martinelli, who is accused of spying on 150 opponents during his tenure. The court will hear oral presentations next Tuesday, while the inspection of over 160 documents continue. The prosecution wants Martinelli to face a 21-year sentence. Despite the allegations, Martinelli is allowed to run for mayor in the general election on May 5th. He also hopes to run for president in 2024.
It's not right that a person who's being prosecuted and has been arrested is running for a public office as important as the mayor of Panama, and at the same time as a lawmaker. I think it's not totally transparent that this kind of thing happens here in Panama.
For us, Martinelli was a good president. We have no complaints against him because when he was in our government, he was a very good president. We had food, we had money. Now, no, we don't have anything.
A 9-year-old boy who is the son of a Trinidadian woman is believed to have died in an attack against the Islamic State group in Syria. According to reports, Isaac Ali died in a Western Coalition airstrike. The boy lived in London but was forced to travel to Syria with his parents. His mother, Nicolas, and 3 siblings are believed to have survived the bombing and are living in a detention camp. Isaac's father is also believed to be dead. Clarín newspaper workers in Argentina are saying their layoffs are unjustified and are demanding their jobs back. 56 workers have been fired without any prior notice. When they arrived at work, the entrance was barred. A 26-year-old worker arrived at the newsroom to find he had been dismissed when his entrance was prohibited. The photographer Rubén Digilio, who took this photo and had worked at Clarín for 21 years, was also fired. He was 2 years away from receiving his pension. The workers are now asking for negotiations with the company. The Marielle Franco House has opened in Sao Paulo, Brazil. The space for culture and resistance is inspired by the feminist, LGBTQ, and Afro-descendant struggles that the Rio de Janeiro councilwoman believed in. A little more than a year after her murder, Brazil still does not know who ordered the death of Marielle. The Bolivian Culture Ministry, in collaboration with the Organization of Ibero-American States for Education, Science and Culture, have launched a new mobile app that teaches users 5 of the country's 36 indigenous languages.
This is the Languages of Bolivia mobile application that can be downloaded for free for Android phones in the Google Play Store. It features Aymara, Guarani, Mojeño Trinitario, Quechua, and Uru indigenous languages.
Imillaja Parlashkiwa. It means the girl is talking, so you have to translation. You can listen to how is the pronounced and how it is written at the same time. It helps you to communicate, or at least build trust, with people who speak Quechua, Aymara, or Guarani.
The application was developed by the Ministry of Culture and the Organization of Ibero-American States for Education, Science and Culture over 2 years.
According to UNESCO, indigenous languages die out every 2 weeks. Out of the around 7,000 native languages in the world, almost 2,700 are in danger of extinction. Estimates say 90% of these languages will disappear by the end of this century, since at least half of them don't have a written form.
The app has 2 options for learning languages, one through individual lessons and another through group work.
About 9.6 million people have internet connection in Bolivia, and over 90% of them use it through their mobile phones or tablets. We believe this immense connectivity can help us to preserve indigenous languages. With the help of technology, we can reach every segment of society.
The app has 4-minute-long lessons and soon will include even more Bolivian indigenous languages. Spearheaded by Bolivia, the United Nations declared 2019 to be the International Year of Indigenous Languages, which aims to help recover and promote the languages of indigenous people around the world.
More than 300 LGBTQ and heterosexual couples have held a kiss marathon in the Colombian capital, Bogotá, to show their support for LGBTQ rights. The peaceful protest at a Bogota mall was inspired by a recent incident in which a gay couple allegedly suffered homophobic aggression. The same-sex couple was reportedly attacked by a man and his family, saying their children's rights were violated by the presence of the gay couple. The mall issued an apology to the couple, saying their security footage proved the aggression was without cause.
The community has organized protests and kiss-ins to show that we aren't second-class citizens and that we have the same rights to actively participate in this society in an equal way.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. Private polling in Indonesia has suggested that the current president, Joko Widodo, will retain his office. Official results will not be available until May. More than 192 million people were eligible to cast their ballot to select 20,000 local and national lawmakers. A quick count suggested that Widodo has a 10% lead on his closest rival, former General Prabowo Subianto. However, the challenger has contested the preliminary reports, claiming he has won the election. Prabowo Subianto said he declared victory early because of evidence of widespread cheating across Indonesia.
Today, I, Prabowo Subianto, declared that me and my friend Sandiaga have won the presidential election for 2019 to 2024, according to 62% of the votes. We have declared victory early because we got evidence of widespread cheating at the village, sub-district and district levels across Indonesia.
Thousands of demonstrators have gathered outside Sudan's defense ministry to demand that the country's transitional military council hand over power to civilians. The protesters are chanting freedom and revolution are the choice of the people. The demonstration comes a week after former President Omar al-Bashir was ousted following 3 decades in power. An opposition coalition called on the military to establish a civilian-led ruling council with military repression. The military has refused to hand over power so far.
I'm encouraging the African Union to take our case and our issues seriously, because we don't want these people to be charged in a civil court. We want them to be charged at an international court, and we need support from the European Union and the African Union, because this is not a small case, so they should not mess it up. Because here in this country, they will keep on postponing this trial.
The Extinction Rebellion climate protest in London has entered its 4th day, with protesters occupying 4 major locations in the English capital. Hundreds of tents, free food stalls and a music stage have been set up at London's Marble Arch, which is one of the 4 landmarks climate change activists have occupied. The activists are calling on the British government to take more radical measures to tackle climate change. Police have arrested more than 500 people since Monday. Our correspondent Pablo Navarrete reports from one of the occupied squares in London.
Here from the centre of London, the 4th day of protests for the Extinction Rebellion protests are taking place. Now, Extinction Rebellion are a group of climate activists who have taken 4 spaces in London, this being one of them, Oxford Street, the main commercial avenue in the middle of the city, and they have been here since Monday protesting what they say is the urgent need to take climate catastrophe seriously. They accuse the political class, Britain's political class, of not doing enough to address the issue, and so they have taken this space. They have also taken Parliament Square opposite the British Parliament, Waterloo Bridge and another space, and they say they will continue over the Easter weekend. Now, according to the British police, up until 5 p.m. yesterday there were 340 arrests, and overnight sources say that another 50 to 60 people were arrested. We've been here for an hour or so and we've seen various people be arrested. We've also seen a lot of children here, a number of scientists who have felt that they're climate scientists who are here to say that they're not hippies, but they're in fact taking a very rational position towards the imminent climate catastrophe that we're facing. So they certainly have put the issue on the agenda. Today's Daily Mirror have come up with a front page covering the issue of climate change, and so it appears that these drastic measures have caught the attention of the British media, and the protesters hope that they will also catch the attention of the British political class as well.
We thank Pablo Navarrete for that report. Over $1 billion have been pledged by billionaires, companies, and ordinary citizens to rebuild Paris's Notre Dame a few days after it burned down. Yet, many questions to the nature of the donations. Critics have asked why some of the business donors have offered so much so quickly. Many pointed out that other famous sites that were destroyed, like Brazil's National Museum or ancient sites in Syria and Iraq, haven't received nearly as much attention. Others have said rich business people may benefit from tax breaks on the donations.
€1 billion gathered up, just like that. When you think about all the problems France already has and what the money could be used for, it's a bit strange to think that there are companies that can provide €100 million just for Notre Dame. And there are so many people on the streets and who are suffering, so I'm divided.
We finish in Zimbabwe, where the country is celebrating 39 years of independence. Despite the rain, celebrations took place at the National Sports Stadium in the capital, Harare. The country gained official independence from the United Kingdom on April 18, 1980, after enduring decades of white minority rule in various forms.
To our people, our citizens, the proud Zimbabweans of this country. 1, let us remain united. 2, let us cherish our peace. 3, let us defend wherever we are, night and day, our sovereignty.
And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.
From here to beyond the South. From here to the Caribbean.